Cabin 13 Productions.
Yeah, I mean, I got 1903. No, but that's when the Wright brothers invented the airplane, buddy.
This is 30 years later.
So, I mean, Miles can talk, can't he?
He's a guy.
Haley can't.
The mute girl? The girl.
The girl who can't talk? Yeah.
Or-
I don't think she does.
So she
I
does.
think, well, she doesn't now. She's dead. But I mean, like, when she...
Do I think there was a magical talking mongoose that lived in the walls and threw their plates? No.
I'm such a loser, sweating God, I'm the worst.
Gef the Talking Mongoose is a curious and eerie tale centered on a strange creature that allegedly appeared in a farmhouse on the Isle of Man. The story begins in 1931 when the Irving family, living in a remote area of Dalby, began to experience unusual events at their home. The family claimed that a talking mongoose, later named Gef, had appeared and started communicating with them. Jeff's voice was described as coming from thin air, and he spoke in a distinctly human-like manner with a mix of wit, humor, and occasional malice. The creature was said to be small, furry, and somewhat mischievous of a being, capable of making clever comments, answering questions, and even imitating human voices. His presence was both unsettling and oddly charming, and he seemed to take an interest in the family's daily life. The Irvings, particularly the daughter, Vori, reported seeing the creature or hearing his voice, which led to a media frenzy at the time. Skeptics quickly dismissed the story as a hoax or psychological phenomena, while others believed that Gef was a supernatural or paranormal entity. Over time, the tale of Gef became one of the most famous cases of alleged cryptid or poltergeist activity in the UK itself. Despite investigations into the events, the true nature of Gef remains a mystery. Some theorists suggest that Gef was a form of poltergeist or manifestation of stress, while others speculate that it was a hoax perpetrated by the Irvings for attention or monetary gain. So what do you think, chat? Was Gef just a thought that became something more? Or is Gef one of the most well-known documented cases of something beyond our capability of understanding? Find out on this week's episode of the Woodsman Podcast. Welcome back to the Woodsman Podcast. We're your hosts, Brent Murphy
And Joey Rucker. And you know the drill, chat. Another day.
Another nickel.
And so, yeah, hope you, as always, enjoyed the last episode of the Woodsman Podcast where we talked
About serial killers.
Celery killers. Celery killers, dude.
We're not vegan.
Well, you think about it, vegetarians and vegans just are still killing, living things.
That is facts. I mean, like, when the cow's dead, the cow's dead. You're just eating the steak. But like...
Yeah. Go on, I want to hear the rest of the point. I want to hear it.
But if you kill the bushes and you cook them, they're just in the fire. And
have you ever cooked a clam or like an oyster before?
No. I'll stop you right there. I haven't cooked either.
You have to boil them.
Does it just go?
Dude, it'll cook. It's cooked when the shell will be opened all the way, and then you can take the meat out and eat it. But
you literally took their breath away.
Yeah, because when you don't have to sit there and watch for the shell to open. What you wait for is when you're in the other room waiting and you hear something in the kitchen, you'll eventually hear, and you're like, I think it's done.
I just want to let you know you peaked the highest you've ever peaked before in my life. But we're going to keep it in because that was perfect.
I'll just cut the audio. And I'll put some random AI screaming voice in.
Of a clam.
Oh, yeah, I could.
Of a clam. Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Anyways, we got some housekeeping to do.
Yes, we do. Wanted to, as always, promote our new show, Back to the Cabin, over on Patreon. As you guys know from every episode we've ever done, that we have only abided to for 1 month so far.
It's okay, chat. You're gonna get like 1 to 2 episodes this week. Or this week. Wow, I'm ambitious. Sorry, I mean for the month of November, because
I'm so tired of editing. But okay, we can do it. So we have some plans for the month of November for any of you who are going to support us and go over there and watch our new show over on Patreon. We're going to be doing a little. Do we mention it here? I think we could promote it, right? What our idea is.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was like, what are you trying to promote right now?
No, the next episode, we're thinking about doing kind of a Thanksgiving, but for the woodsman.
Yeah, like a woodsgiving, if you will.
Woodsgiving, exactly.
Yeah. So if you guys have any favorite like Thanksgiving side dishes, main dishes, weird dishes that probably none of us have ever cared about before, but is frankly, prominent in your family, let us know in the comments, or you can email us at thewoodsmanpod@gmail.com.
Yep.
Or you can DM us on Instagram at woodsmanpod.
Where only Brent will answer you because I'm very bad at using our social media.
Don't worry, we don't get a lot of people responding anyway.
Because you haven't been posting lately, dog.
Listen,
that's
man.
a housekeeping. Where have all of our hit clips, bro? Where are all of our viral sensational
Well, then the
moments?
housekeeping should be, I just got a new job, and I'm slaving away at 2 jobs right now. So I'm a little tired, all right? I'm a little tired. I'm a little tired. But,
right, that's fair.
We're getting there. We'll be back this week. I promise. We'll have all of our cool little viral reels and our TikToks.
They were blowing up,
and
dude.
maybe even a Twitter.
Oh,
this week.
I happen to remember. Speaking of housekeeping, I happen to remember that last episode, Mr. Somebody over here said, "I promise."
Well, I promise.
I'll get it out this week.
I promise this week I'll get the Twitter out. Okay.
He said that last week.
Well, I promise now, okay?
I pinky promise.
Right. I middle finger promise because the middle finger's thicker than a pinky. And I feel like it means more.
Promise,
I think it means more coming from the middle finger.
That's fair. One thing aside, this isn't really real housekeeping chat, but one thing we wanted to mention right before we started recording.
This is real. This is first
like
of all,
we talk about.
You said it's fake housekeeping. This is real shit that just happened right now.
On some of our scary episodes that we recorded for our Halloween vibes, we had talked about how there were a couple times where we heard like weird noises, like banging outside and stuff like that. We just heard a noise today right before hitting record, and it was the most like perceivable, like real.
It was a yell.
Hearty scream
it was a
I've
yell.
ever heard. Like, and a man scream too.
Yeah.
Like, this, whatever happened to this guy, I'm afraid to go outside.
Like, bro heard about our topic and was like, and then that was it. So, in chat, it's even scarier because we heard it in the headphones, which means the microphones picked it up and we weren't recording. Yeah. So we could have got this on recording.
Could have shown you.
It was a little scary. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little daunting of a.
It was a little sound. Weird. Kind of weird. It always happens on these episodes, the ones that are kind of about supernatural in nature-ish things.
Well, speaking of that, did you want to tell chat what this episode's about?
We've hinted to it. You guys heard a little bit about it in the intro, and I think we said his name on the literal last sentence of the last episode. But today, we're talking about Gef the Mongoose.
You could tell who brought this one to the table, chat.
Yeah.
based on Joey's enthusiasm.
Yeah, I was a little skeptical at first. I won't lie. I'm also not one of the kinds of people who have a lot of brain cells. So when Brent gave this idea to us months ago in our little like document, I thought we were going to be talking about a talking goose. Like I saw the word mongoose and I was like, wait, there's a talking goose out there? Like a kind of guy.
And then he realized,
and I realized
he realized that a mongoose is not, it's not a bird, first of all.
a bird at
It's
all.
not aquatic. It's more like just a ferret.
Yeah. It's like a meerkat, dude. It's like so needless to say, when I heard whether it's of bird nature or just straight up mammal, I wasn't ready for us to talk about Gef the mongoose. So whether I read off some facts today in today's episode or it's all just Brent telling me a story, we're gonna see. But I'm gonna be right there with you, chat. We're all gonna figure out what's going on with this mongoose talking thing together.
Well, don't worry. There's a lot to be talked
Yeah.
about. So, well, well, before we leave you guys, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, stories, or studio inquiries, you can always email us at thewoodsmanpod@gmail.com. And again, if you want to interact with us on any socials, you can always interact with us at Woodsman Pod at Instagram, or Strange Kids Personals, or Pie Master J on Personals. And we will have a X or Twitter, whatever you guys prefer. I'm always going to call it Twitter, but whatever you guys prefer, we'll also have a Woodsman Twitter out when you guys are listening to this episode. Can't tell you what it'll be called, but follow us on Instagram and I'll post what the username is. So
sounds good.
yeah, well,
All right, let's get into this talking sensation we all know as Gef.
Talking Mongoose. Well, chat, we are, not gonna lie, getting into the Christmas spirit a little soon here at the Woodsman. We literally 2 seconds ago just made up our Christmas plans to
Yep.
to drink some spiked eggnog around the fire. Well, what is it? Chestnuts roasting
on an open fire.
Yeah.
More like a bonfire in your backyard.
Because we're not allowed to use the furnace in my house. Well, as Joey said before, today we will be discussing one of my favorite, oddest stories I've ever heard about in my entire life. Gef the Talking Mongoose.
Yep.
So, Joey,
You
I'm
know-
going to assume you haven't heard anything about my man Gef.
Yeah, no. If I had to fashion a guess, he is a mongoose, not a goose. He's a mongoose who kind of this is my total doesn't know anything take, right? He's a mongoose that just sort of like a duende will sort of walk up to you and he'd be like, "Hey, I'm gonna steal your keys." and people are like, "No, Gef," and
Not my keys.
my keys. And then I think that's his lore.
Well, that's funny you mentioned that, at least about duendes, because there are so many things that we will get to towards the end of this episode that many people have speculated Gef to be. And I wouldn't say duendes is on the list, but one that we have prominently talking about. No, that's crazy.
Talking about.
That we have talked about since our Christmas episodes last year.
Oh, hold on. It's right there. It's not an SW. It's
We've talked about it quite a bit. You bring it up.
A ta.
You're-
Isn't it a ta?
Oh,
Oh my
toe.
God. Tulpa?
Yes.
Tulpa.
Yes.
I got
there we
it.
go. There we
Yay.
go. So a lot of people, which we'll get into again later in the episode, believe that Gef could possibly be a tulpa. A thought form,
which is like
that
a manifested
yes, a
thing.
manifested thought form that has been, conjured up by people that have taken on a physical aspect of being. So pretty interesting. As we said in the intro of this episode, in the 30s, this happened in the UK, the Isle of Man. A family named the Irving family bought this almost like farmland out on this island that was pretty much uninhabitable. It was something that, not a lot of people were using as far as like land. It just wasn't accessible. Couldn't really grow too much. It was just one of those, like, they kind of just bought this plot of land and just lived on it,
Sure.
They weren't thinking, I guess, long term about the situation. By this time, the family had heard some interesting things taking place, and it started almost as what you could consider a baby trying to learn how to talk. Like the gurgling, like the sounds that babies make and everything, just the like
Sure,
they're trying to pick up what you're putting down, but they can't because they don't they don't have the self-awareness yet to like be like, oh yeah, I'm a human and I
let
make
me do
words with
that.
my mouths, like
Sure.
like, so they heard that in the walls of the farmhouse. They heard, yes. So they heard this in all these random places within the house. And somehow, I believe it was the daughter of the family. And we'll get into like the family, who's who, all that kind of stuff later. But I believe it was the daughter in the family that had ended up saying or singing nursery rhymes to whatever this thing was. And it eventually learned how to talk from these nursery rhymes, from these, like, this person talking to them as if it's a child.
Because a lot of nursery rhymes, as I think a lot of adults have found out, when you get older, are about like tragic things. Like if you're singing "Ring Around the Rosies" to the Gef the Talking Mongoose, it's like ashes. He's like,
we all fall down, and he's like,
got it.
I with that. But so I won't get super into the story because again, there's so
much to it.
There's so much information that goes into Gef, the Talking Mongoose himself. There are multiple books written about him. There are many, not only eyewitness cases, but people who had come down that were paranormal investigators that had investigated this. A lot of people who were just investigators and like weird, strange phenomena in general that like came down, investigated this, and they left the house saying like, I don't know, man.
But like, what do you mean by that? Did they come down and have experiences and that's why they're like, oh, I don't know? Or was it just like, I don't know what you're talking about?
There are some cases and there are some people where they claim like, I believe a hoax is at foot, but I can't explain to you how it's being hoaxed. And then you're like, okay, so how are you going to say there's a hoax, but you can't give any directional pinpoint as to what's causing the hoax, who's causing the hoax, how's it being done, what's being done. Like, they can give no answers. They can say like all they want that like, oh, it has to be a hoax, but they don't give any answers.
Having experiences? Like,
yes, so some
also
of
eyewitnesses.
There are some where they have like heard weird things. I wouldn't say all of them saw weird things, but a lot of them, like, it was very audible, I would say. Now, the family themselves, the Irving family, claims that they have had quite a bit of, like, things as far as physical and, like, eyesight wise, they've like seen things. They claim all this. They claim that they've seen.
Mongoose?
Yes, they've claimed that they've seen like a weird furry
Can I ask,
mongoose
is
mongoose
this like
type
an area
creature.
that mongoose are not like supposed to be in?
I don't think so.
Okay.
From what I've like from
'Cause,
what
like,
I've heard, from what I've read.
Trying to take this seriously,
No,
but like the first thing
I
I gotta
know,
know
I
is
know.
like if they're just like out in the countryside, right?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Apparently, Gef was the one that told the family that he was a mongoose. So, the weirdest things is that this entity, once it learned, quote unquote, how to talk, had told all the family this stuff and origin about himself. As far as
okay.
he told the family that he was a man that originated in India, that was shot and killed, right? That he was murdered, like out in India.
Oh,
And then
Was his name Jeff?
somehow, I believe so. From what I've read, it sounds like, yeah, like that was his name, Jeffrey or something
Yeah.
like that.
whereas I would
And,
usually do an Australian accent for a bit right now. I feel like Indian accents are probably just in bad taste.
That's in bad taste. Yeah, that's in bad taste. Aussies, on the other hand.
Aussies, on the other hand, they're our favorite.
Shout out to all our Aussie listeners.
Shout out to you, Jeff.
If you guys are still listening.
You ever made it to Down Under?
Down under. Well, Gef made it to quite a bit of places. Gef apparently had talked about how he came from India, traveled from Egypt into the Isle of Man, which is in the UK. He traveled at once with like a hunchback or something. And there's
with a hunchback?
Yes, like like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, just
Like
some.
he was a
No,
hunchback,
no,
or
no.
he
Like
was
he
with
traveled
someone
with
with-
a hunchback.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it.
And so, again, we have a lot of information, but I will just say, when it comes down to it, it sounds very Tulpa-esque. It sounds like almost like someone created him and he latched on and he just latched on to whoever was there that kind of believed. He traveled
Maybe.
with them,
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff. It just sounds very weird, and it just sounds very weird geographically because you think of like the last place he was at before the Isle of Man, which is in the UK, was Egypt. That doesn't geographically kind of line up, like how do you get from,
What time era was this?
Well, when this happened in the Isle of Man to the Irving family, this originally, I think, started in 1931. So
Yeah, and
it's pretty old. I mean, it's not super old, but it is like an interesting amount of time to where it's like a lot of things could have happened, I think.
See, he could have just traveled by plane.
Yeah, I mean, I get 1903. No, but that's when the Wright brothers invented the airplane, buddy.
This is 30 years later.
So when was the airplane like in full? Bro's like, the Wright brothers invented it in 1903.
What was the year you said?
1931. That's how you're looking up the invention of the airplane.
You could have traveled in one of these bad
I
boys.
feel like probably,
Dude,
yeah,
you can make some
1930s.
serious distance with this guy. I'll throw it up on screen. for
What
chat.
does that say? The 1931 layered super
Solution.
solution?
Yeah, Fantasy of Flight. For
That
our audio
looks-
listeners on Apple or Spotify or what have you, we're looking at a very
A prop plane.
prop plane.
A single prop plane.
Very. Ugh.
Very doesn't look like it could go from Egypt to the Isle of Man.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You're right about that. You're right about that.
So Jeff apparently crossed the ocean. I won't even say what ocean because I'm not going to sound that
Don't wanna be
illiterate.
dumb,
But
no, I
like,
feel it. I
he
feel it.
crossed the ocean to get to the Isle of Man to harass this family. I guess. I don't know what the point of doing this was, but anyways. We're going to go into the first set of stuff I have here, which is the notable abilities and actions of Gef, just to kind of describe what all he was capable of doing, what all he was able to do, all the weird stuff he was kind of saying, doing, all that kind of stuff, and we'll dive in from there. So, number one, Gef could talk and imitate human voices, which we kind of covered a little bit. One of the most extraordinary aspects of Gef was his ability to speak, and particularly to mimic human voices. According to the Irvings, Gef would often speak in a high-pitched voice, which, from other sources that I found, was what some people quote as like 2 to 2.5 octaves higher than a normal human.
So we're basically talking here about
think
Alvin
of like
and the Chipmunks.
you want to make some money, but like, you know, like 3 octaves higher. Like, you want to make some money? Like like some like weird, interesting. Yeah. So Gef would often speak in the high-pitched voice, and it sounded distinctively human, though sometimes with almost a sing-songy type quality to it. Now,
I still never understand what the sing-songy description means.
So the only thing that I found very interesting about it, because I'm trying to make connections to like other things we previously talked about, there are
I think you described
lot of Bigfoot.
interdimensional Bigfoot.
Yes, a lot of Bigfoot stuff where it's like a sing-songy, like a weird, like tonal type of thing, which is odd. Like you said, I don't really know how to describe it other than to just like play.
It's hard
like
for me to envision it because in my head I'm always thinking like, "Hello, my baby, hello," and I'm just like, "That's not right."
Well, they're not speaking words.
I guess it would be more like, "Hello, my baby, hello, my darling."
Well, I mean, it sounds like it's more like a sound, like a melody or something. I don't know. It sounds odd. With Gef, though, he was talking. He was speaking English. So I don't know, like, really what the sing-songy type of thing meant. But if it was before he was speaking, it would be interesting to maybe compare some of those to some of the Bigfoot stuff to see if it is at all the same, if it's different, how is it different? Because at the end of the day, if you believe this is a real creature, then I would assume it's like maybe in the cryptid category, which Bigfoot also resides in. So I don't know. It's just interesting to make those connections.
It is interesting.
But one of the eyewitness stories about this is coming from Vori, which is the daughter, which a lot of this stuff kind of stemmed and centered around when all this stuff was happening. She often spoke of Gef's ability to mimic voices, and especially said that Gef could imitate family members' voices, including her own, which would already be quite terrifying. And that right there already sounds familiar as a audio doppelganger.
Oh, that's true.
Know?
Yeah, that's
which
true.
we have also talked about before, which is very interesting.
And then you say this person was the one who like would sing to him? Yes,
so Vori was the one that I would say ultimately kind of taught him English in a way, or just how to speak in general. One specific example she gave was when Gef mimicked the voice of her mother, Margaret, calling out from different parts of the house. James, who is the father figure, also reported hearing his own voice echo back to him in a strange, distorted man-manner. Which, I'm good. If I'm hearing my own voice, it's one thing hearing a family member, but if I'm hearing my own voice, I'm done. Like I'm out of there. Not only could he speak, but he could speak in multiple languages, and also sometimes known as using colloquial. Gosh, I can't even talk. Colloquialisms. There you go.
Can you remind me what that means? That's a big word for.
So it's like phrases and such, like.
Oh, okay.
Like all that. So some accounts suggested that Gef had a surprisingly broad vocabulary, which odd because he's a mongoose. At least from what he claims.
He's a fast learner, bro.
Yeah. And he could even use different languages or regional expressions, also known as colloquialisms and all that. And though these claims were not as consistent as reported, some eyewitness stories talk about In a statement, Vori claimed that Gef sometimes used phrases that seemingly were unusual and were unusually sophisticated for a
Say it.
mongoose.
Say it. Yeah.
For a mongoose or a small creature.
Pretty sophisticated.
I would say
for a
any mongoose. Some
Go
reports even mentioned that Gef referred to people using terms like old man, or even used some expressions that weren't immediately recognized as regional dialects. So could you imagine? Because you
How
have
many
to.
times do I gotta teach this lesson, old man?
Yeah, that's probably what he sounded like. You also have to remember, no one was seeing this guy. Like, no one.
Oh, see, that's what I keep forgetting is that.
I mean,
not
the
seeing
family
him.
says that they had
Had
seen him,
Yeah.
but like majority of the time, it was just this random little
voice.
voice that was talking to him, and was like, this guy, you know, like it would literally be them if they were talking to us, like, this guy, but like 3 octaves higher. Like, what? Like, I don't understand. Bro gets the references at time, I guess.
Terrible on you, Brittany.
Yeah, like, wow, your butt doesn't look good in that dress. Like, you know, like you're saying some,
Who said that?
he's saying some out of pocket stuff before there were even cameras,
Who else
bro.
but
Like,
Gef?
so, on top of speaking in multiple languages, you know, disembodied audible voices. We won't go too much into that because we've already discussed the fact that Gef most of the time was
Just some voice.
was
kinda
just a
around.
voice talking. He was talking around this farmhouse. So
Yeah.
I don't know, man. He would engage in conversations with humans, which that right there, a little concerning.
Yeah, who talks to an inanimate voice and just keeps talking to it?
I mean,
You would.
people pray.
You would though. Yeah, but no, I mean like
You're talking to something
Yeah.
that's not going to give you a response. At least,
Yeah,
you know,
but that's what I'm
Gef
saying,
is
like-
talking. You
like-
know, like, at least
that's
Gef-
what you mean. I get, I
like,
get
you
what
know,
you're
like
saying
at
now.
least Jeff's saying like, you want to make some money? And, like,
Yeah, but
know,
don't you think
like-
that there's somewhat of like, if you're going into prayer, if you're going to bring that up, right? There's a bit of comfort, as much as there is annoyance, in the fact that you don't hear anything back. So it's all a faith thing, right? You're just like, I believe that someone is hearing it.
Yeah.
If you go to talk to the wall, and there's just like, Gef, yes. Like, dude, you know how scared I'd be? I would be.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned that because apparently Gef was a talker.
Well, clearly.
I mean, he was a talker to the point where he would keep the family up for like over 2 to 3 hours a night.
Oh my
just,
God.
just asking questions like a child, like, why?
Why
like-
is the sky blue?
You're like, I don't know. It's 1930. I don't have the science for that. Like, maybe the sky's blue because there's water up there. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what people knew in the 30s, but like they weren't in.
I used to know
Now-
the Wright brothers.
Yeah, bro's like I was family with the Wright brothers, and
I
I
helped
helped
them invent the
them.
plane.
Yeah, the plane I actually took over here to come in. I don't know, man, but he would keep them up. He would keep them up. He would keep them engaged, I will say.
Okay.
An eyewitness story of this was Vori frequently reported conversations with Gef himself. She had claimed he had a particular fondness for joking and teasing. So, bro had a good sense of humor, you know? It's hard to get that nowadays.
That's good.
You know,
I mean,
like,
I just hope that there's
If
not
I'm
going to be
I'm gonna talk to a ferret that I haven't seen before, I want to know bro has a good sense of humor, you know?
Yeah, I just hope this doesn't take some real dark turn later. you
Oh,
know?
I mean, like, it doesn't end
What are
great.
you- what are
It
you
doesn't
gonna
end
do?
great for the family, but
Oh, good.
so for instance, when he was asked about his identity by anyone in general, Gef allegedly would answer, "I am not a spirit. I am a mongoose." He also engaged in playful exchanges, such as calling out insults or mimicking family members when they weren't around. So, dog, he just sounds like me. He just
Are you
sounds.
Gef the
He
Mongoose?
just sounds like a member of nobody's family. Someone just who's around. That goes. while you're looking over at me like I don't sound like that. Like he literally sounds like me, dude.
I don't.
Like think of me showing up to the Christmas party and you saying, "Oh my god, I got a limited edition Wolverine comic book." And I said, "Oh my god, Wolverine comic book." Like that's just literally I think he's literally me from the 30s.
Jeff's a little asshole, is what I'm hearing.
Jeff's a little asshole, bro, and I love it. I
Who happens
love
to
it.
just be a
He
mongoose.
just happens to be a mongoose.
is
I
there
mean, it's
ever
not
gonna
by
be a-
trade. I mean, I guess he tells people.
Is there
like-
ever going to be a point in his lore where we find out what the correlation or significance of a mongoose is?
So some of the researchers believe if it was something as far as like, so like I believe we've talked about it before when we've talked about poltergeists. That some people believe that poltergeists are reoccurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, and that
Okay.
basically would mean someone potentially displaying physical things in our world that would equivalent to like something happening in the mind. So like a lot of like people who experience poltergeists, a lot of the times there is a teenage girl like we're seeing right now with Voorhees or Vore Voorhees. I'm out here talking about Jason and the Halloween movies, but
Never seen
no, but Vore, she was, I believe, 13 or 14 when all this stuff started happening. And some people believe if you're going to go the psychokinetic route, that possibly he has a manifestation of something that was like internal that was brought externally and I
but
guess
that's where I'm
manifested
like,
itself.
But if he was manifested,
But like, yeah,
why
at the
does he
same
have
time, why is he a
weird
mongoose?
backstory? Not even that. Why does he have a backstory of being an Indian man who was killed?
Well, there we go, my friend. This is what all these paranormal researchers question, because you can't take one thing and then just like, oh, okay, it has to be this because this.
Yeah.
You got to think of all the other things happening. And one of those things was him saying himself, like, yeah, I was this. I traveled from here. I did this. I came over here. I learned speech. Like, you know.
I learned speech.
Yeah, you learned how to talk. You learned how to do all this stuff, you know. So you can't just throw out the baby with the
Maybe it could
bathwater,
be
so to speak.
Reincarnation.
Exactly. There's a lot of things that could go on, especially with this case, because I will let you know, to the very end, no one
No one
can
figures it
say
out.
100% if it's a hoax, if it's fake, if it's real. Like no one
That
has
happens-
answers.
That happens
No
a
one has
lot
answers.
with these kinds of topics. You know, it's like aliens and Bigfoot, and you can give as much evidence as you want of these supernatural things, like you know, Atlantis and all this stuff. Where it's just like, I mean, if you really think about it, it's like that meme with like the clipboard, and he's just like,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
those, and it's like. But it's just as plausible as it is implausible, which is the problem with all of these. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, there's evidence to support certain things, and there's other stuff where people will just never believe it.
Yeah. Well, and have you heard of Occam's razor by any chance?
Occam's razor?
Yeah.
No.
So it's basically a term meaning in layman's terms, like the simplest answer is the most explainable answer.
I've heard
you know,
of
in
that,
a way.
that idea. Yeah.
And you know, when you get to stories like this, you honestly have to use Occam's razor, and you have to ask yourself, like, what is the most plausible? Because you get a story like this where it's like, I got no idea, dude.
I would be
There
inclined
are
to
so
disagree with you
many-
if it weren't for the fact that there are so many accounts. If a couple people, even in different parts of the world, had experiences with a talking mongoose,
Naturally.
I would, you know, chalk it up to be kind of like Slender Man kind of thing. But from what it sounds like, there are a lot of people who have supposedly had an encounter or an interaction or
Yeah.
some kind of description of this said mongoose.
Well, and that's what I mean as far as like using Occam's razor. You have to tell yourself like the most simplest explanation. Well, everyone was seeing that. Like this wasn't just like a family thing. Like all these paranormal investigators were over there, all these neighbors, all the this and that, townspeople. These people had experiences, so you kind of have to tell yourself like, all right, well, I can't just say it was, swamp gas for like UFOs. Everyone wants to, blame UFOs or aliens on like, oh, it was a bunch of swamp gas or whatever, like in these rural areas.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
Using Occam's razor, it's like, dude, if all these people are experiencing this, it's not giving a contradictory statement of like what it is, who it is, or anything. You kind of have to like ask yourself like, dang, maybe there's more to this, like maybe there is something having to do with this that is a little bit out of our realm of thinking, maybe out of our realm
I've never heard of that term before.
Really?
I've heard of the idea. I've heard of like the simplest answer is usually the right answer.
Yeah.
But I've never heard of that before. That's interesting. I'm just like looking at some of the stuff on it. That's cool.
Heck yeah, dude. It is fascinating. It's a very fascinating concept that you can pretty much apply to like
A lot of
everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be weird stuff, just things in general, So on top of that, he offered predictions of advice. Some accounts suggest that Gef would offer predictions about the future, give advice, or even warnings. Though these claims are less frequent, they contributed to the mystical and cryptic aura surrounding the creature. Some eyewitness stories were, in one instance, Gef was said to have predicted the rain and warned the family about bad weather, which later came true. This led to some to speculate that the creature had an uncanny connection to nature, but these claims were never fully corroborated. My bad.
Corroborated.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
very interesting. Interesting to see just in a short amount of time that people are connecting them to nature.
It's also like one thing I notice about this kind of phenomenon with most of the supernatural things we discuss on this podcast is that the said being or entity or whatever you want to call it always, at least as of now, has good intentions or wants to like help humans with a problem or better themselves. It's a very interesting like key detail that I notice in a lot of these things, whether it's like, well, no, that's not true. The Shadow Kids were kind of assholes. They're not Shadow Kids, the Black-Eyed Kids. They were misfortune for the most part. But
it's
aliens,
interesting because like you bring up Black-Eyed Kids and all that kind of stuff. When you really think about it, it really seems benevolent. It seems like something that doesn't really make too much of a maybe a difference as to like they always show up as, oh, nothing's terribly wrong right now.
Mm-hmm.
It shows up as like, oh, maybe it's not too bad. It's just like a disembodied voice claiming it's a mongoose, or like, oh, it's just these kids that want a ride home, or they want to ride home to grab their money for Mortal Kombat tickets, Oh, they just want this, they just want that. Same thing with duendes. Like, oh, they just want a little offering to like make sure that that they're there, type of thing. Or I feel like most of the paranormal stories we've really talked about always start as a benevolent thing or a being or something,
I wonder what the correlation is there, what the importance is.
I don't know. It gives a very trickster vibe to it, like oh, I'm this, but I pulled a fast one on you, now I'm this, or
but
like now I'm doing this.
That depends on certain people, like because with the duendes it also talked about how it just depended on what kind of duendes it was, whether it was like the black or the white. And with the Black-Eyed Kids, they're more negative, but a lot of times with aliens at least from most of the encounters and stories we've talked about, they have not had bad intentions.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think we've at least.
I mean, abductions, yeah. But I mean, they're bad intentions to us because we don't understand why it's happening.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, and we'll dive into so many other, alien cases in the future, but yeah, there are just so many. But it's weird, like making like parallels to something that's so odd as a talking mongoose.
Yeah.
To like some of these like other stories that we have already like discussed beforehand. So he used to make objects move and make noises. Obviously, he was making noises when he was learning how to talk, but Jeff's mischievous behavior extended beyond just talking. He was allegedly capable of creating strange noises, moving objects, or causing sounds to be heard in places where no one could explain them. James Irving himself, the father figure of the family, and other family members reported hearing scratching sounds in the walls, floorboards, and or ceilings. There were also reports of objects being moved around, including small items like hats or shoes, and occasionally strange tapping sounds or knocking would occur in rhythm, leading some to believe that Jeff could manipulate physical objects or was associated with poltergeist-like activity, which we had brought up before. Maybe it is like a little poltergeist activity or psychokinesis or recurring psychokinesis
Maybe.
involving the
They
daughter.
also never did they see the objects moving, or did they just notice it after the fact?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I know the family had talked about like seeing objects moving.
Okay.
I don't know if that means that they saw it like physically moving or if they just noticed like, oh, hey, this plate was put up in the counter and now it's on the table, or I didn't really find that much. I'm sure if you read a lot of the books, which later we dive into some sources, some people, some actual eyewitnesses that were there. They have a lot of books covering this case. I obviously didn't have time to read all the crazy lore and mythos about Jeff. I'm just here to give you some of the crazy stuff.
All right.
So on top of that, there was some physical manifestations. Like I told you before, sometimes Jeff would come to them as a mongoose, I guess. He was occasionally seen by the family, and descriptions of his physical appearance were inconsistent, but there were accounts of a small furry creature being glimpsed at night or heard scurrying around the house. Vori herself reported seeing Jeff at various times. She said that she once saw him darting across the floor and described him as a small, furry animal with a fox-like face. James Irving also mentioned seeing something move across the floor, though he was never entirely certain whether it was Jeff or was it just a trick of the light in general. However, these sightings were rare and often not clear enough to provide a definite identification of the creature.
So, they could have just seen a squirrel.
Yeah. No, yeah. When you read about what the actual like physical descriptions of Jeff are, Jeff doesn't really look too much like a mongoose. They say his physical description was a body almost as small as a mouse or a rat.
Really?
So very small, but with a very bushy tail that kind of like came up, like moved toward his head or whatever,
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
like candy cane shape. And it was like a yellowish, like reddish color, almost like a squirrel. Like literally when you think of like what a squirrel would kind of look like, but the tail was just really bushy and big. So I don't know. Body was long, I guess, like a ferret, but I don't know, man. There are also claims that some people say that James Irving, the father, had captured the photos. A lot of other people have said that no, he didn't capture those photos. It was another person who had lived there at the property after him. The people after the family that had moved, because the family moved out. So obviously you know.
They got tired of Jeff's
Yeah, they
antics,
probably got
dude.
tired of Jeff, but the people who moved in after them and claimed that they had shot and killed Jeff. But
Really?
the daughter herself had examined the pictures and stuff they took, and she told them flat out, like, that's not Jeff. It's not what he looked like. It's not, like, no. So, who
Don't
knows?
you think that would
Who
be
knows,
a weird
man?
conversation to have with the new homeowners that are buying the property from you? Like, just so you're aware, we have a mongoose in the walls. His name is Jeff. He will mock you.
But don't worry, he hasn't hurt us, so just vibe with him.
Yeah.
Just vibe with my guy, you know?
Yeah.
I will have some pictures that I'll send you or whatever. If we decide to put them up, we decide to put them up. If not, you can literally just look up Gef The Talking Mongoose and go to images. It's literally the images that were taken. They're in black and white. So you can be the judge. I personally don't think any of the photos are Jeff. I think it was just some people trying to not maybe pull a fast one, but maybe like, I gotta document this, so I'm just gonna like take a picture of this random thing. I personally don't believe anyone got any physical, tangible proof of Jeff himself, at least in a mongoose form. I don't know, man. It's crazy just thinking this man was a mongoose in general. So,
Yeah.
bro would make unusual animal sounds and noises. Some people in the family had telepathic or supernatural communications with Jeff, especially Vore in general. Vori. I'm sorry. Her name is very oddly spelled, so it's either Vore or Vori, but you know.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
try.
She was quoted as saying Jeff could sometimes speak directly into her mind, which, again, if you go into any of the cases we've talked about before, sounds very alienish.
Yeah,
Sounds
no,
very
it does.
telepathic, mind talking.
Checks out.
Yeah,
Checks all
so
the boxes.
interesting. He could create or influence physical sensations. Jeff was said to influence physical sensations, such as causing the air around him to feel cold or having an unusual effect on the people nearby. That sounds like very ghost type activity, which is interesting. He could, sorry, just definitely lost my train of thought. Eyewitnesses, James Irving, he claimed to have witnessed this happening. In one of his interviews, he had mentioned that Jeff was sometimes accompanied by a cold draft.
And is James the dad?
Yeah, he is the patriarchy figure in this story. And there were also reports of an electric charge in the air when Jeff spoke.
Dude, so this mongoose is like a Super Saiyan?
So he sounds like Miles Morales as Spider-Man.
Yeah, disappearing. He's a mongoose.
but
he
he
also
can talk. Well,
Yeah, but talking is not
Well, cloaked.
inherently a Miles Morales thing.
I mean, Miles can talk, can't he?
He's a guy.
Haley can't
Which one's Haley?
in the game.
The mute girl? The girl.
The girl who can't talk? Yeah,
That's
you're
a
right.
problem people have. That's they were born to talk. They just had mishaps. That's not fair.
Well,
to
Haley
say.
can't talk. So, anyways,
I don't even have an argument for this stupid ass conversation.
whatever, man.
Oh my god.
So those are just some of the things that my man Jeff could do. When you dive into the Irvings, we've kind of talked about it. James, he was the father. He had originally come to the land to farm, and he was relatively quiet, and he was a private man. He was the first person in the household to notice unusual events around their property, yet the daughter, Vori, she was the one that kind of had all the main stuff happening to her. So, very interesting. As the story developed, he seemed to oscillate between disbelief and growing frustration and not being able to even control the situation in general, which you gotta admit, like as a man, if you're like the head of the household and everything, this would be a pretty frustrating thing
Yeah,
to
of
go
course
through,
it
you know?
would.
like you just bought this property and everything, and you think that's going to be like the new, almost like the new American frontier to us, you know, like, oh, you know, I'm going to finally make a living. I'm going to do some hard work, all this stuff. And then you got a weird talking mongoose, I guess, on your property. I don't know, man. But Margaret Irving,
was the mama.
she was the mother. She was often referred to as the matriarch. She was the more pragmatic of the two parents. Yes, she also somewhat resigned to the bizarre events taking place around her. So she was pretty like, okay, I guess this is happening. I guess Gef is here. I guess Gef is doing his own
Which
thing.
is so weird to me that people would be
It
like that.
sounds like this family was very progressive. It
'Cause I'm
sounded like
sorry,
this family is
let's
very
be
down for
real
Gef to be
here.
there.
If I heard voices from the ether, I'm thinking, and I hear scratching and I hear tapping and things around the house are being moved. There's two options here, right? There's one where I see an object move and I'm like, there's a ghost.
Mhm.
We have to leave the house.
Yeah.
There's other ones where I don't see the objects moved, but I see them moved after the fact, when in which I think there's a man in our walls. And
So like Brahms from The Boy.
we leave the house.
Yeah.
So I don't understand what kind of crazy family this is, but
They were pretty. I
were
mean, it
chill
sounds
about
like
it,
they were
dude.
pretty down
they
for
were
it.
homies with
They
Jeff.
were homies with Gef. They were homies with Gef. Now I will say that a lot of people who had come to visit the Irving family had mentioned that Margaret herself had some witchy qualities about her. They thought that she could have been a witch. They thought she could have been someone who, yeah, which I mean I think is hilarious because you think of like all of the Salem witch trials type of stuff. You think of like all the stuff that has gone down with just women who have been pretty outspoken, like within their lives and all that sort of thing. And you can almost see how people were like not down.
But the Salem witch trials happened in 1692 to 1693.
That's a big gap.
It's a big one. 16. I probably am dyslexic, but
You're okay.
1692 to 1693. This is happening in 1930s. Why would they suspect witchcraft?
I mean, I
at
guess
such a weird
maybe
year?
because she was just very progressive. She was very like, okay, I guess. Like you have to
She's
think,
progressive.
bro, people
Burn the witch.
people were weird back then, dude. Like people were just so anti-women, and I don't understand. Like any
I
any little
suppose.
thing that any like woman or girl had done, it just ends up so sad, bro. Like people
Yeah.
are just so crazy.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But people also had weird things to say about Rory as well. So like I don't
I
know.
don't think you said the name consistently.
I don't think
the
I have
entire
either.
Episode.
Voray.
Voray.
Man, I don't know. I don't know her
Oh
name.
man.
It is a very interesting name, I will say. She was 13 when all of these things started happening, so she was definitely like on the cusp of teen. She was the key figure in the story because
She taught him how to talk.
exactly she was the one that had the most direct interactions with Gef himself. She was often described as being bright, imaginative, and somewhat solitary. And this led some skeptics to question whether her vivid imagination or a psychological phenomena such as reoccurring spontaneous psychokinesis was behind the events. She claimed to have spoken directly to Gef and was one of the few people who could communicate with him on a regular basis. Vory's bond with Gef was central to the story, and some witnesses even noted that her belief in the creature appeared to be genuine. She reported She reportedly called Gef her pet, which wild.
I am a man from India.
And she's like, I want you to be my mongoose.
Here's a bowl.
Yeah, which is crazy you say that because we'll get into that.
Great.
And seemed to have a high level of understanding with the entity itself. Some theories suggest that she might have been a central figure in the development of the myth, either unconsciously creating or amplifying the phenomena around her, i.e., possibly a tulpa. So very interesting. Now you said a food bowl and everything. Don't worry. The family at one point, because they just loved Gef so much,
No.
they
No.
would leave food out for him. And surprisingly, Gef would eat everything but like the dairy and the milk and stuff like that. He was very healthy.
Did the mom or the dad hear the voice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, like, I was going to say, if things are moving, there's a bowl out.
Maybe it's just a person.
Food's
Maybe
getting
it's just
not
a
even that,
person.
but food's getting snatched, and Vorai is believes so strongly in this creature. Maybe she just sees things that aren't there, and the mom and dad played into it, and they
That-
were like, "Yeah,
That could be one.
yeah, hey, yeah, we'll get a bowl for Jeff."
See, here's the thing. Is Gef would literally, when we go back to the bull situation, they would leave food out for Gef. And Gef would just, I mean, his temperament's really changed over the years, I will say. It was almost like he was growing. It was literally like when you think of a cat and you think like, oh, okay, they're cute. Like 0 to 3 months, they're like, kids, right? And then like 3 to like, I don't know, 2 years, they're like teens, late adult or early adults, and then boom, after that, they're like, old cats or whatever. Well, I don't know how cat logic works, but
Okay.
but you think of it like that, and bro had a temperament. Like bro was in the learning phase, bro was in the like curious phase. He was asking all these questions and everything.
You heard the noise too?
Ah, those are fireworks. Sorry,
I
cool.
hope so. Or people dying. But, probably not.
Oh yeah.
Go on.
So, I don't really know how a cat's temperament really, works. I'm a cat dad, but I don't really know. When you look at it, he's almost literally like an animal that could just talk. I mean, bro went through the learning phase. He went through, oh, I'm curious. I keep the family up every, 2 hours every night, 3 hours every night, try and figure out what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And then you get to his, like, little mean side. He's like, I can do whatever I want. I'm a ghost, but I'm also a mongoose. So you respect me, like bro is just, he was just on a whole other level. I don't know, man. I don't know. The Irving family with relatively ordinary lifestyle, they became the focus of a media frenzy, as one would when, saying you
Claiming what they
talk to a mongoose. The story gained attention. The events became innocuously I said that word right. Nice.
You got it.
The events began innocuously with strange noises, taps, scratching, odd noises, and soon escalated into the reporting of a talking mongoose who seemed to communicate in a human-like voice. The family, particularly Rory, insisted that Gef was real, and they maintained this belief even when skeptics and journalists from around the world descended onto their farm. So they kept this belief till the very end, I guess. Yeah. So how you feeling so far, man? How you feeling about this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a mongoose. It's
You have to remember, he's the one that called himself a mongoose. It's not this family calling him a mongoose.
Sure.
I mean, think of
it's-
Loki, bro. Loki's just a trickster. What if bro was just like,
This is not a demigod, though. This is not.
But what's a god? What's a demigod? What is
This
all
is
that?
a man from India.
But you don't know. But you don't know that.
That's what
the
he
thing.
claims. So if you're going to tell me,
He's also claiming he's a mongoose.
But that's what I'm saying. So you can't claim he's a mongoose then. If you
That's
can't,
what I'm saying.
So there's just a thing.
It's just a thing saying things, man. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm like, don't get me. I'm trying to make any theory I can of what it is or what he is or what it is. I don't know. It's just like it kind of sounds like there's a crazy daughter, and her parents really don't want to hurt her feelings.
You have to remember, though, James is the one that originally heard everything before the daughter.
Well,
my plan's been foiled.
I don't know, dude. I don't know. I don't even know what to think. I think that this family's not the only one who had encounters.
I mean, this family were the main ones that had encounters.
People
Neighbors
claim-
had claimed to like have things happen to them. Journalists, paranormal
Speaking-
researchers, parapsychologists.
Like these other encounters, was there talking in any of those encounters, or just shadows moving in the night, or scratching noises?
Talking.
Talking was involved. Still?
Talking is the main thing that Gef would do.
So then I guess I'm not saying it's not happening. There's definitely some kind of strange occurrence, but I don't know. I don't know what conclusion I'm supposed to come to about this talking mongoose.
Well, don't worry, man.
Yeah.
We're going to dive into not only just the family, but we got some eyewitnesses and some journalists and some people that might shed some light on this whole story.
I hope so.
All right, let's dive in. So while many books and accounts about Gef the Talking Mongoose were written by researchers, journalists, and paranormal enthusiasts, a few works were either authored by or included into accounts from individuals who were direct witnesses to the strange events surrounding Gef. Here are some key books and sources that either contain first-hand accounts from the Irvings or those who were involved in the case themselves. So the first one we got is The Story of Gef the Talking Mongoose by James Irving. Obviously, that's the patriarch. So bro wrote this himself. It's not a full book about the case, but he did provide direct testimony and personal accounts to the various journalists, investigators, and even the 1932 pamphlet he distributed. That pamphlet was entitled The Story of Gef the Talking Mongoose and is one of the primary first-hand accounts that the public has to understand the family's perspective on the events. So, short little pamphlet. Honestly, when I think about it, because this was like in the 30s, I think about my 1950s edition, the first edition of Secrets of the Saucers by Orfeo Angelucci. I kind of think of that because that was technically considered a pamphlet, and that was like 127 pages. So I'm thinking, at least if we're going sort of by same time frame, I'm thinking maybe a pamphlet was actually a pretty small-sized book, but was still technically a book, even though they considered it like a pamphlet by itself.
All right.
So I don't really know, but I just thought that was interesting.
No, that is.
You also have Vori and Gef, which came out in the 1930s. Obviously, Vori, the daughter. She was the one that had the direct interactions with Gef, and she never, again, like her father, wrote a full-length book, but she did provide numerous interviews and accounts in various articles and books that were written about her and the experience itself. So, also, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, some of these, when it comes to sources, these are, like, really good sources because these are from
them.
the people themselves. So, very interesting whether or not you believe in it.
Is this a stupid question? Are any of these people still alive?
So, Vori died in 2005.
Oh.
So, she lived to be
Good
pretty,
age.
like, I think 80s, maybe 90s. like early 90s or something like that. So very interesting. Obviously, you know, I could go on forever about Vori's story, but again, because she was one of the main people, she has most of the stories having to do with Gef. And it was just a lot of crazy things in general. You also have the Isle of Man mystery by J.W.B. McGinnis.
What a name, dude.
I know, dude.
I love that
McGinnis.
name.
Could you imagine your last name being McGinnis, bro?
Is that-
That's
what is that? Is that
crazy.
Irish? What is that?
Yeah, I think it's like either Irish or Scottish or something. But McGinnis that's a hard last name, dude.
J.W.B. McGinnis.
McGinnis. Some haggis.
That's what I'll do.
That's what I'll do.
I'll stop doing the Aussie accent and I'll start doing the other ones.
Please do, bro. Please.
I'll try.
So that book contains accounts from various individuals who investigated the Gef case, including interviews with Irving, the family itself. McGinnis, while not being an eyewitness to anything himself, compiles firsthand testimony from the Irvings and others who were involved, including journalists and investigators who visited the farm to begin with. The account details how the family interacted with Gef, with many quotes directly attributed to James and Vori themselves. So, if you want one that's not really about anyone who was there to begin with, he does have some pretty good sources that can tie in a whole bunch of stuff and a whole bunch of quotes. So, I would be interested to see like what he has in the book.
I have to know, how many of these did you actually look into, or how much of this topic was gotten from a podcast?
No. I actually looked up like a lot of this myself. So
Interesting.
like
Nice.
especially the books and everything, I will say. I didn't get this from Astonishing Legends like I normally do. So
Oh.
yeah. So I actually was listening to this podcast, Our Strange Skies, and he had mentioned Gef the Talking Mongoose, and I was like, interesting.
Talking
And
mongoose,
then-
you say?
And I listened to that and I was like, wow, okay. And I actually got very interested when I had heard a similar story called The Bell Witch. And she has a lot of commonalities with Gef the Talking Mongoose in general, just in the way the story goes, to the point where the patriarch of the family, the father, he was poisoned and died.
Oh.
And there are a lot of speculations behind how that happened. The family claimed the Bell Witch did it, but there are other speculations thinking that there was possibly some abuse having to do with the daughter of the family. The daughter was again around 13 to 16 years old, same as Voorhees herself, same as all these other people, where people consider there possibly being poltergeist activity, being reoccurring psychokinesis. So that's why I brought that up at the beginning, because there are like a lot of like interesting parallels. But people believe that maybe there was either sexual abuse or actual physical abuse happening with the daughter and the father, and that maybe possibly someone in the family poisoned him.
Wow.
And they had blamed the Bell Witch for it. And they were in a small town community that possibly covered it up for the family. So very interesting. I would love to do maybe a show on that, but there's a lot of information with that. I think the Bell Witch stayed around for like 9 to 10 years of their life. So there's a lot. There's a lot of
Story
information.
goes deep.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, bro. That's what I'm saying. So the next book we have here is The Mysterious Talking Mongoose by Harry Price.
That's also a great name.
Harry
for a,
Price,
for a,
dude.
For a book. I mean,
The Mysterious Talking Mongoose.
the
Yeah.
Mysterious Talking Mongoose.
I was going to say, Harry
I'm
Price,
intrigued.
it sounds like a regular name.
No,
but okay.
the name of the book, I apologize, is a very good name.
Yeah, so Harry Price is actually a famous paranormal investigator, also possibly a parapsychologist, but I'm not really too sure. But from what I've heard about him, I've heard a lot of good things. He was one of the most prominent figures to investigate the Gef case. He visited the Irving's farm early 1930s and conducted his own research into the phenomena. And although Price was skeptic, He did provide a detailed report based on his observations and interviews with the Irvings. And while not eyewitnessing in the strict sense, Price's book, The Mysterious Talking Mongoose, includes testimony from the Irvings and other individuals who witnessed strange phenomena at the farm. And Price was intrigued by the case, but ultimately remained unconvinced that Gef was anything supernatural, actually. So this is coming from an actual paranormal investigator.
Like someone who's sane.
Right? That's what I'm saying, man. So he says that his observations of the family and his interviews with them form a significant part of the historical record. So because he was so prominent in their case, he has been like one of the main people to take a lead, take the reins on everything, and is ultimately like one of the most talked about people when it comes to people investigating the case.
I'm just surprised because like we're not done with this list of stories and sources. How many people have looked into this stupid thing?
See, you thought I was crazy when I brought this up, but there are a lot of people who have investigated this.
For a mongoose.
For a talking mongoose that wasn't even a mongoose, bro.
It was just some ghost Indian guy.
So, I mean, you have The Talking Mongoose by K.M. McAuliffe, if that's how you say the name. Incredible last name. McAuliffe. You also have Gef, The Talking Mongoose by John Rimmer. This book leans heavily on the interviews with the Irvings and other contemporary witnesses. He conducted extensive interviews with the family and others who were involved, including reporters, local people who knew the Irvings, and some of the early investigators. Rimmer's book presents a detailed account of the events with a focus on eyewitness experiences of the Irving family and their interactions with the talking mongoose. So it sounds like his report as well is pretty in-depth. A lot of people he was able to get interviews with. And I'm not quite sure what he found, but I would be interested to see if he was more on the skeptic side, or if he was like, oh, I don't know. Maybe
Very interesting.
maybe it's very interesting. I don't really know. But obviously you had all of those books. We have some eyewitnesses and some interviews, which I will briefly go over because there are a lot, again, just like the books. But you have the Daily Mail that came out in 1931, and that was a newspaper that actually conducted interviews with the Irvings in 1931. So they were like right on the scene, because the first account I think happened in 31. So
why is this making such real news coverage?
because it's real, dude. It's real. You
dumb.
also have the Manchester Guardian, who also ran several articles about the strange events at the Irving farmhouse, including interviews with James Irving himself. These were among the first to publicize the family's experiences and prompted further investigation from reporters and paranormal experts. So you also have investigator Robert Busby.
Just a straight up investigator.
Just straight up investigator. Crazy.
Dude, can you imagine someone coming up to your house in like a trench coat? and,
I'm
like, a
thinking
clipboard,
bro
and
was
he's
like
just
one of those like, I'm an investigator, but really
He's
he
like
was just
16 years
but
old. and
really
it's-
he was just a guy like me who's trying to
I'm here
like
to
figure
talk
out
to
some
you
weird
about
stuff.
Gef the Mongoose.
Yeah, like bro has no. I'm sorry, Chad, if you guys can hear this. I've hit my knee on the same table like 4 times
It's
in the past
okay. I've
3
bent
seconds.
my leg and it's popped like 3 times throughout the episode.
Yeah, so Robert Busby, I mean, I don't know his credentials, but he sounds very much like someone like me.
I'm gonna give his name a 5.
Yeah, he's got a 5 name.
got
Definitely
a-
not a Price.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who's got the last name Price, they just sound like I
Busby
could pay
gives him
him for
extra
some.
points because Busby, I don't see the name. Busby
That is true. I've
often.
never seen Busby, but I've seen a lot of Roberts.
Yeah.
Freaking
middle name.
Bobbert.
My middle name.
Joseph Bobbert Rucker.
Joseph Bobbert. My family used to call me Joe Bob.
Joe Bob, that's you, bro. That's you.
me.
Well, we couldn't end this list of investigators without mentioning the man himself, John Keel. So John Keel was the writer of the book, which also became the movie under the same title, The Mothman Prophecies.
Okay. Oh, that's right. I thought you were about to say
Gef the Talking Mongoose.
and the movie Gef the Talking Mongoose. Major motion picture. I was like, no way.
There apparently, I think there
Please don't
is
say
a movie
that.
about Gef the Talking Mongoose. I'm pretty
what kind
sure.
Of story? I mean, maybe if you tell the story of the encounters that the original Irving family
It happened
had.
for like 10 years, bro. They got enough information to make a movie about it. They have enough. We just listed off like 6 books right now.
But you know it's going to be one of those like YouTube short film quality stories. It's not going to be a good enough.
And they're not
like,
even going to get a mongoose. It's going to be like a
No,
ferret with like
yeah,
a painted tail or something.
and they're going to blow the entire budget on a final scene where they CGI him to look super scary. And it's like where all the money went. So all of the background shots are like,
Our money actually went to making this mongoose disappear.
exactly. Dude.
That's all we had the money for.
Oh my God.
So John Keel, my man, the author of the Mothman Prophecies himself, he also investigated this case.
There you go.
And while Keel did not physically investigate Gef the Talking Mongoose himself, he was probably in Point Pleasant investigating the Mothman. I don't know. His writings on the subject were influential in shaping how the case was viewed within the context of paranormal research itself. His focus was on understanding such occurrences as a part of a larger mystery of human perception and interaction with unknown or unexplained forces, rather than trying to definitively explain them in conventional terms. For those interested in Keel's perspective, The Eighth Tower is an important work that frames Gef and similar phenomena within his theories of high strangeness. So, I mean, I'm a John Keel lover, so I'm always going to be someone who...
You don't say. You don't
You
say.
know, I love John. I love what he's doing. I love the Mothman Prophecies as a book. There's just so many things going on. Bro has experienced some weird things, man. Bro has experienced Men in Black coming in and drinking his bleach from under his dish counter.
What is it with the bleach encounters, dude? Like, that's so weird.
I don't know, man. I don't know. But, I mean, if someone drank my bleach from under the counter, I'd know they mean business. That's all I'm saying.
That's my problem. How do you know they're drinking it?
Well, here's the thing.
How do you know that it didn't tip over?
Well, one of the things that Keel had mentioned
like a cup?
specifically about that was that, like, he was scared because they didn't bring their own bleach. They went under his counter, which, first of all, when you think of...
but why wasn't there a rat that got down into the basement or
was
wherever?
like, hey, stop it.
No, I'm not even saying that. Like, why couldn't, like, how do you know it was drinking from? The cap's off, the bottle's on its side. Maybe a rat got out of the wall, knocked it over. Why are we sitting here? Was there a cup of, like,
Well, no, like...
what could have been milk, but instead was bleach?
Well, like, here's the thing, like...
I don't get this.
At least with that story with Keel is, like, first of all, they just appeared in his apartment. That's how he, like, describes
The
it.
Men in
like,
Black?
Yeah, like, he doesn't say, like, I got a knock at the door and I opened it and they were just, like, you know, they just barged in. Like, no, like, he was just in his room, I don't even think it was an apartment.
Were
I
they
think it was at
drinking
a
the bleach
hotel or something.
in front of him?
Yes.
That's what I
Yeah,
was wanting to know.
Okay.
Because I'm sitting here thinking
So-
that he saw them in the house and then, like, they disappear or something.
No, so they appear in the house and then they tell him, like, hey, stop. Like, Like, they just told him, like, stop investigating all this stuff you've been investigating, stop doing all this weird stuff. And then Q was like, who are you people?
Q's like, are you drinking my bleach?
No, apparently bros were like, oh, you don't think we mean business, eh? And they went over to his counter and grabbed the bleach under his. First of all,
Okay, you know
which
what?
is even scarier.
You know what? Yeah. That's a good intimidation.
you.
If somebody was like, you think we don't mean business? And he grabs a bottle of bleach.
That's what I mean.
It's like the scene.
But it's even scarier when you think about the fact that, like, how'd they know the bleach was under his counter?
They could
They
have
just
searched before he got
They
there.
they just appeared in the
Nah.
in the place, bro. They didn't even.
It's like the scene from SpongeBob where he's like, welcome to the salty spittoon.
How tough are you?
I had a bowl of nails for breakfast. So, without any milk. And it's like,
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
right this way.
Right this way.
Like, that's how I would feel if somebody was like, if you don't think we mean business, and just takes a bottle of like Mr. Clean.
Yeah, you know how scary that is? You know how scary, like, first of all, these fools just appeared in your, like, and I wish I knew if it was an apartment
Yeah.
or if it was, like, a hotel. I'm pretty sure it was, like, a hotel. That's even worse. Bros just appear
That is
in your
weird.
hotel
Yeah.
room, tell you to stop investigating weird stuff. You say no, and then they're like, okay, bet. And they just go to your kitchen, grab your bleach, and drink it in front of you.
Yeah.
Like, nah.
How does this go back to Mongoose Man?
Well, I mean, Keel investigated
Oh, that's
them.
right.
He was like, hey, bro, like, there's some high strangeness going on. I don't know. But,
Like
so,
he didn't come to any like finalized conclusions.
I don't
right?
think so. I think his was more like using it as maybe like a broad example of like the weird strangeness going on within the world. Because Keel was very much on the level of like, we don't really know what any of the motivations of like any of these things are to begin with. So we can't even really begin to understand them. I think he was more like on a wave of like, at least by studying these things, I can ask them better questions. I think that might be more of the wave that Keel has been on. But That's just me. I don't know. People can interpret anything all they want. So we're coming semi to the close right now. I'd like to go through some of the events that happened up into the point where my boy Gef was no more. So we so we have from 31 to 32. This is when 1931 to 32
was 16 or the Salem. This bit's dropping hard. Please move on. Please just
This
get off
isn't
my
the
face.
Salem witch trials.
Go to Brent's cam.
So
Hide me from chat. I can't be
so 31 to 32 was like pretty much when like the height of everything was happening. Jeff's activity occurred in the early 30s, in particular in 31, when the Irvings were visited by a number of journalists, paranormal investigators, and curious locals. During this time, Gef was reported to speak in a high-pitched human-like voice, engage in conversation with family members, mimic human voices, moving objects, and creating strange sounds in and around the house. Various investigators like Harry Price, who was a renowned paranormal investigator, and Robert Busby, who was a local reporter visiting the Irving household, tried to get to the bottom of the mystery themselves. However, despite their best efforts, Gef remained elusive to everyone except the Irving family. So that already right there is a red flag. I will admit, I'll admit a red flag when I see
New
it.
theory.
Yeah.
The whole family's crazy.
Maybe.
It's not Jeff. It's not what was his name? John?
James.
James? It's not James. It's not Varee. It's not Margaret. Mary?
Margaret.
Is that her name?
Yeah.
And it's all of them. They're all just
They're just all crazy.
They're just
all
nuts.
crazy. Okay, cool. Well, the activity decreased around 33 to 34. Jeff's activity reportedly began to slow down, and the talking mongoose became less vocal. A few strange occurrences were reported in the house, but other than that, that was about it. The family still believed in Gef, but it is seen that the creature's interactions with them had become less frequent. The media attention surrounding the case was also waned. Yeah. Interesting word. And by this point, the public interest had started to shift to other paranormal stories, and the Irving family's story was being regarded with increasing skepticism. So
I don't blame them. The story kind of sounds made up.
yeah? Tell me how you really feel, bro.
It kind of sounds like they were just like, I know how we can make a few bucks.
Okay, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that because we'll get to that. So the disappearance of Gef happened between the mid to late 30s, and the family reported that Gef had ceased to communicate entirely. There were no more voices, strange sounds, or physical manifestations. The mysterious mongoose-like creature, which had once been so active, simply vanished. According to James Irving, in one of his final public statements on the matter, Gef, quote-unquote, left the house around the mid-30s. James spoke about how Gef had apparently given him a farewell message and told the family he was going to, and I quote, leave them alone. This marks the end of Jeff's reported activities in the Irving household. Vori Irving, in later interviews, claimed that after Gef stopped speaking, there was an eerie silence in the house and no further strange occurrences took place. While she remained convinced that the creature had been real, her family gradually returned to a normal life and the case faded from public consciousness.
So it's made up. They got their 10 seconds of fame, and then they were like, we should probably cut this out before someone real.
You should probably cut this.
Yeah.
So
That's my opinion. I don't know that for sure.
Well, we'll
Irving's
we'll get
family's
to it.
deaths.
We'll get to it. Yeah.
Why do we
yeah.
have that on here?
So, in the later years, after the disappearances of Gef, the Irving family lived relatively normal lives, although they were still sometimes asked about the creature in later years, which I would hope so with how crazy and how big this story got as fast as it did.
Yeah.
James particularly remained steadfast in his belief that Gef had been real, even though there were no more paranormal events to substantiate the claim. As time passed, the story of Gef the Talking Mongoose became more of a local legend and part of a larger folklore of the Isle of Man itself. The case was occasionally referenced by paranormal researchers, but there were no significant follow-up investigations that shed new light on the mystery, which probably some of those investigators probably ended up being someone like John Keel because he was not a part of the investigations. So, interesting. When you go through the family's deaths, James passed away in 46. His wife, Margaret, died in 43. And Vori, the daughter, eventually moved away from the Isle of Man and lived a quieter life. While she maintained that Gef was real for much of her life, she gradually distanced herself from publicly surrounding the case. In later years, she would speak occasionally about the events, but her accounts were always consistent with the belief that she had truly encountered something extraordinary. She was the last living member of the Irving family directly involved with the Gef case when she passed away in 2005 at the age of 91.
91.
Woo!
Wow.
Man, dude, good for her.
Yeah.
91, that's a long life lived.
And you said this started when she was 13?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a lot. It's a lot. So the reason why I say, like, I'm glad you brought up what you think. So I would guess this would maybe go in with our discussion.
Sure.
So after all of this has happened, what do you think? What do you believe Do you believe the whole Jeff case is just all around fake? Do you think there was nothing involved with that? Do you think there was something they took it too far?
Well,
Like, what do you
there's
thinking?
outliers, right? There's outliers in that there were neighbors that experienced some of the happenings. There were supernatural or psychological. There was another terminology you used,
Psychokinesis or
some ologist or some kind, but I can't remember.
parapsychologist?
Parapsychologists that came out and did their own research and looked into it themselves, and some of them had their own encounters with something strange or phenomenal. And so that is kind of the only thing that makes this a bit strange to me. I do understand that there are also other pieces to the puzzle, like the fact that this girl believed in something from the age of 13 to 91. You've got to genuinely believe in something if you're going to hold on to that story that long.
Yeah.
Especially if your father died in 46, you said? 45,
yeah.
46?
And she died in 05.
Yeah, so like she held on to this story, this belief, and this like encounter on her own.
Well, and
for
I will
many
tell you,
years,
and I
know?
will tell you, like, to her deathbed, she still claimed that bro
That-
was real. This
And that's
happened.
why I find it interesting. I do think that there's something to it. Do I think there was a magical talking mongoose that lived in the walls and threw their plates? No. I think this very well could just be some other kind of supernatural entity, a
Yeah.
spirit, a ghost, a ghoul, a black-eyed kid. It could be any one of the names. I don't think I want to officially put Gef the Talking Mongoose on the list.
on the mongoose pedestal.
Yeah,
of-
I don't know if I could get down with that. For all we know, I'm still very interested in the idea that maybe he was a guy who died and came back, and maybe there was something to the mongoose thing. I think it's more interesting to think that there was a man who lived in India who maybe passed away or something and then came back
yeah.
and kind of interacted with different people over the years. I think that's an interesting story. I don't like to think that maybe this is a manifestation of any kind or a tulpa. That's at least my personal opinion.
See, that's interesting because I would say probably I would put it in tulpa range.
I'm not saying it's unbelievable. I do think that with the whole family believing in this story wholeheartedly, it very well could have been manifested. I just don't want it to be. Kind of like how I was disappointed with Revenant's real story. I just am
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
If that's the real thing, then I don't like it. I don't like
Then I'm gonna keep going with the movie version.
it. yeah, exactly.
No, I mean it's very interesting. I will say, because you had mentioned something before about let me get my 5 seconds of fame, let me get my coin where the coin is due, type of thing. Now I will say, if they were perpetrating a hoax, which that's one of the things on our key theories for Jeff's disappearance, is a hoax or exaggeration. Some people believe that the Irving family entirely fabricated the story and exaggerated their experience, perhaps in an attempt to gain attention or fame. And the involvement of the press and the supernatural investigators may have further fueled the myth, with the family enjoying the publicity. Now, I don't think it was a hoax at all.
Okay.
Only because when you read up on the story, James lost money on selling the property.
Really?
He did not gain any more money. He lost money. He bought the property for, I can't remember how much. It was in the thousands, obviously, because it was in the 30s. But he ended up selling it for a vastly lower amount than what he bought the property for. And most of that had to do with the property wasn't worth anything. I mean, it was very out of the way where it was. I mean, people weren't, it wasn't an attraction or anything like that. With stuff like the Bell Witch, like, that land was very big. It was very nice. It was nice land. There was a cave on it. believe like a river or
this
something like
is
running through it.
Not.
But that was a completely different thing happening. You got this family. This kind of sounds like a very like in the middle of nowhere property. There was no electricity. There was no,
Yeah.
there was nothing, So it's kind of like, okay, if they were going to use it as a hoax to gain money, they definitely didn't gain money.
Did what's her name? Variar. That
Vori, yeah.
I just keep changing the name on this thing because it's fun. Did she have any benefits in life growing up after the fact? That
No,
maybe
so
any of this story got like applied to her.
well,
or
one
people
of
reach
the
out or
things that
anything?
I was gonna bring up is Vori moved mainly because of she couldn't get away from all of these stories. She has said in later interviews, which she hasn't done very many because she is not about it. She's not about the publicity. She is like explicitly said, like, Gef ruined my life.
Really?
She was like,
Oh, so
how
she's
am
not
I
a fan of
supposed
this
to
at all.
have? No, she was like, how am I supposed to have a husband? How am I supposed like when his
Maybe-
family asked
Maybe,
like
and
what?
here, this is just a thought. Varara. Maybe drop the story. If you're worried about the husband and you're worried about all this weird stuff, maybe you're just like, nah, I was 13. I believed in a talking mongoose. We all have those.
But here's the thing, like, you could say that if it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like,
guess.
why hold on to a story that's like inevitably going to ruin your life unless it wasn't real? They didn't gain money from
But
it.
what-
They didn't really.
what
I mean, yeah, they
does-
gained
what does
popularity, but
continuing to
not
talk
good
ab-
popularity.
Yeah, okay. But what does continuing to talk about it actually do for you?
I don't think she does.
So she
I
does.
think. Well, she doesn't now. She's dead. But I mean, like, when she was alive, I don't think she was talking about it. I think that was just in one.
You don't think people
interview
like
she had
you
later in
or
life.
people like what was his name, John Keel,
Yeah.
or Astonishing Legends, or like BuzzFeed Unsolved? Like, you don't think people under this category of wanting to know mysteries would have like reached out to her over the years and tried to like interview her? Or
I think she turned down a
She
lot
just
of
turned them
interviews.
all down.
I think she turned down a lot of the interviews. I think she only had like maybe 2 to 5 interviews later in life. She did not want to talk about it.
Wow.
She was very like this.
You know what? I'm
This
sorry.
single-handedly ruined my life.
If that's the case, I honestly actually very much respect your opinion, Karara. To be fair,
I mean
to
that
be fair, what is the actual spelling of her name?
Vori?
I want to
Vori.
Vori.
Yeah.
I do respect that take on it, Vori, because I do think that would be a tough life, especially if you do genuinely believe, as funny as it sounds, that there was a talking mongoose of some kind in nature. That is a tough thing to have to believe in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter what the age.
Well, and I mean, like, not to. I mean, it sounds funny to compare to this, but I mean, I'm watching the Santa Claus movies right now. The Santa Claus,
Yeah.
and one of the things that the kid says is like, how do you think it feels to have to keep a secret that I care so much about?
Oh yeah.
Like to
I know-
myself.
I know the exact scene you're talking about.
all that stuff. And then I think, like, imagine what it feels like to grow up with something as weird as that happening.
Yeah, that's true.
To the point where you got to move away because people won't stop asking you questions, all this stuff. You're on an island. You have to remember, you're on an island in the UK where this happened. She moves away.
I don't mean to be disrespectful
you
to
know?
her, but I also just think that if you do move away and you do put down interviews, even if you believe it, what's to stop you from just living a normal life now?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, yeah, you could say that until people ask you about it. Like, if it happened to you and then I ask you, like, well, did it happen? Are you going to say no? Like, are you going to have to be like, Yeah. Like, because, I mean, if you're saying no, then you abandon all the belief, you abandon everything you went through. And then, with paranormal investigators, with reporters, with news articles, with all this stuff, like, you have to think it's not just you're lying about, like, oh, this never happened to yourself.
No,
You're
that's
lying,
fair. That's fair.
and you're putting your family name into the grave. You're like, well, I know they claimed on their life until they died that it happened, but I want to live a normal life, so I'm just going to say, nah, it didn't happen. Like, it wouldn't work like that, Like, at least if you had respect for your family. If you don't, then, like, yeah, cool. But, like, if your whole family is going to the grave saying they believe it, you move away because people won't stop asking you. People find you, they find your information, they start asking you. At that point, are you gonna deny it? Or are you just gonna be like, yeah, this happened. It ruined my life. I don't want to talk about it anymore. And then that's it,
I would have just.
But that's
stopped
just
talking about
personal.
it.
That's just personal.
I don't
so
think it's necessarily disrespectful to just want to be done.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think you can decline anything
Yeah.
people ask you, but.
Well, I just mean give up on it. I mean,
I think she did. I think people wouldn't give up on her.
that's fair. That's
you
fair.
know?
Yeah.
Like, I think she was at the point where she's like, buddy, this ruined my life. I don't want anything to do with this. But y'all keep asking me. There's not really much you can really do. I mean, it would be the same thing with Brian Bethel with the Black Eyed Kids stuff. I mean, imagine people asking him 24/7, can we do an interview with you? Can we have a podcast interview with you? Can we talk to you about this? Can we talk to you about that? And yeah, he wants to be done with it, but you think he's going to just be like, no, this didn't happen. Like, no. Like, he's not going to say something like that because it happened to him. Like, that's just something that, he's going to have to live with for the rest of his life, unfortunately, So, I don't know. It's very interesting. But when you go into some more of the disappearance type of stuff, all the theories, you got the psychological explanation that kind of goes in turn with all the weird psychokinesis type of stuff, or if they were just imagining all of it's in itself. I personally don't believe that. I don't think. I mean, maybe the psychokinesis part, maybe, but like, I don't think all of them are experiencing it, and they're experiencing it to the degree that they say they were. I don't really know if I believe in, like, oh, they just made it all up in their head. I think some of it's like, I mean, maybe, but things moving around. I mean, we didn't even talk about it, but one of the first notes I had was, like, Gef apparently killed, like, over 200, like, rodents or, like, mice for the family.
Rodents. I was so scared you were
And,
going to say,
like,
like, children or
and
something.
I'm
I
sitting
was
here.
like,
Oh, no, not children. Just like rodents or like rabbits or whatever. And then I'm sitting here like, well, did they have like tiny hand marks on the necks or something? Like, did bro just, just like strangled them? Or
unless Ferrari just went down to the basement one day
and strangled some rodents?
Like.
But like the whole family had like seen these.
They can't
and
tell the
brought
outside
these
world that their daughter is strangling
well,
rodents.
maybe there were tiny handprints. I don't know.
Right.
Do you know?
No.
It's a talking mongoose. I don't know if they have opposable thumbs. I don't know how that works, man.
Gef doesn't exist.
That you know of.
Right. What state? Where was this? Not state.
This is in the
was
UK.
In the UK, right?
Isle of Man.
Yeah. So we're good. Right?
Yeah,
we don't even have to worry about it.
I don't think he's. Well, I don't know. He traveled from India to Egypt to
Wasn't this when he was a
the
man?
UK.
Though? Had a
No.
plane?
This is apparently after he died in
The
India.
talking mongoose.
He traveled with. That's what I mean. Like yeah.
Okay.
yeah. So
He hitched a ride.
he hitched a ride. No, he quite literally hitched a ride over. I don't know. So we got the hoax. I don't believe it was a hoax, to be honest. Poltergeist activity or unknown entity. I mean, this one I can get behind. If that it just kind of depends on what you define a poltergeist as. I don't really know what I define that as, but an unknown entity, yeah, for sure. I mean, he probably could have been something,
Just something, yeah.
you know, trying to,
we don't know.
we talk about like the trickster gods and stuff like that all the time, like Loki and all of that. You know, could just be one of those classic cases of like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna trick you. You want to make some money, you know, like, and then they involve you in a pyramid scheme or something. Like, I don't know, man. Like, but
No, I could believe the
unknown
poltergeist
entity. I can get behind that for sure. The thought form tulpa theory, that one I also believe heavily in. I don't think it was a tulpa originally, but I think they possibly I think maybe their minds influenced what was going on.
I mean, yeah, it's hard for me to say that it wasn't like tulpa or manifestation kind of thing, because it was a lot of like one group of people, and even other people too, believing that there was this
talking mongoose. Yeah.
So I mean, if I'm willing to say that anything stems from something, and some of that can sometimes be related to manifestation, I've said it on other podcasts, then I can't necessarily rule out the mongoose man. But I'm not happy about it.
I mean, to me, it sounds almost like
is this like where
it
you
was
fall more the
another.
most?
I think it maybe could have been another entity.
So
It
you're
learns
kind
how
of-
to talk and all this stuff, and then maybe feeding off of the family's energy and like their belief. Maybe it like
So why
tulpa'd itself into being
leave
something
them
more.
at the
or-
end, though? Why leave them off at that point, do you think? I mean, I know it's just all theories at this point, but
No. I mean, that's interesting. I would be inclined maybe to believe that after it picked up so much and everything, maybe once it got to a standstill, that maybe he kind of just didn't have the energy to feed off of anymore, you know? Because when you talk about the gradual change, like all the stuff that happened, he just randomly just kind of stopped. He did less and less until he was.
it seems like there was
anymore,
a progression with him the entire time.
Yeah.
When he started,
Well,
he
that's what I
couldn't
mean. It
talk
was
and he didn't
almost
do
like he
stuff.
grew up. Like he was in his infancy
I
to
wouldn't be
prime
surprised
to death, or
necessarily
like
if this was some kind of child spirit,
Yeah. No, yeah, because a lot of the things he does is very childish.
That's what
Like
I'm
there's
saying,
a
yeah.
lot of childish things going on to it, like the mocking, like the very like
the mocking,
like
learning to talk,
Yeah.
throwing stuff. It's like it's all
eating specific things, like
Yeah.
leaving certain things but eating other things, like all it's very like a childlike trickster type of thing. So I don't know, man. I would definitely say I'm leaning more towards like a real entity that kind of just progressed based off of other people feeding like through it or feeding into it, not like feeding off of it, but definitely like, oh, hey, this is real. This is crazy. I'm going to interact with it. And then like maybe the interaction after interaction kind of just like gave more energy.
If I'm falling back on one or two of the theories, if it is an entity of some kind, I am going with unknown entity that they just didn't really know what it truly was.
Sounds like we're playing Phasmophobia right now.
Yeah, it does. And if it's not that case, I definitely think it was a hoax.
Really? That's so interesting.
I'm thinking
'cause
if
I
it's
just
all a
don't-
physical, earthly thing that happened, I don't think there was any weird nonsense that actually happened, and I think that the family may have just been confused at the most, and at the least just wanted 5 minutes of fame, even if it costed them more than it gained them.
See, that's just so
That's
interesting.
if it's that way. If it's not that way, I totally don't think it's manifestation. I think it's an unknown entity. I think
Yeah.
it's something that we don't actually know what it
I
truly
think they
was.
like fed into it, gave it more power to like do other things.
A lot
and
like
then-
when we use the spirit box, you know how we're supposed to kind of go into it not suspecting what it is. we hear
Yeah.
words on there all the time. Woman, man, 30, and we have to make our assumptions. What if they just like heard the word mongoose and they were like,
I'm just gonna repeat whatever I like.
yeah,
remember.
and they just kind of
Like,
run
yeah,
with it,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and it could just totally go into their subconscious,
Yeah.
and influence them from there.
Well, that's funny you said that because I did read something about like when they were trying to maybe like some of the investigators perpetrate it as a hoax or whatever. They said something about maybe it calls itself a mongoose or anything like that because it had heard maybe poems or something that were being read out loud by Vori, or
Yeah.
that it maybe had heard the name mongoose from like them because they're in the middle of nowhere. I don't know mongooses are prevalent in in the Isle of Man, but everything I read, it doesn't sound like they like really are. But maybe it just heard the word and it was like mongoose. I'm gonna go with a mongoose, and then it just kind of develops its whole personality around that.
Yeah, I could see that,
But then
especially
they're-
again if it's like
yeah.
a child spirit or something, or child entity.
Yeah, like I need to like grasp onto whatever I can grasp onto and just roll with it. I don't know, but it's just such a strange story. It's
If
just
you're-
an
if you're
all around
settling-
strange
settling back
story.
on two of the theories. What's your top two then? Like I did,
Definitely entity,
unknown entity.
and then definitely like a tulpa type of thing. I think it was real. I think whatever was going on was real. I'm not saying like it being a mongoose was real, but
You
I
don't
do
think
think
anything
that
was
like
fabricated?
something was really happening. Whether or not we will ever understand like what was actually happening, probably not. But like I just don't see I don't see a cash grab coming from this. You're in the middle of nowhere. It's not like, you're in the town where everyone knows your business really fast, or word travels, all this stuff. Word traveled with them being in the middle of nowhere. Let's like get that straight first of all. John Keel, I mean, depending on whenever he picked it up, like writing the Mothman prophecies, he was in West Virginia in America. So it's like if John Keel's getting a hold of it, that is someone who is getting a hold of that. And this story takes place in the UK on an island.
Yeah,
So word is traveling very fast about something that they don't understand in the 30s, enough to bring all these reporters, bring all of these, investigators, parapsychologists, paranormal investigators, newspapers,
I
journalists,
wonder how it got
all
out.
this stuff.
Like I wonder how it actually. made
Yeah,
its
and
name.
that's what I want to know. Like, how did they all figure this information out, or how did they find this? Yeah. But I just don't think from everything that happened with all those investigators, with all these books, with all of these, in the news, in the media, all the press that it went through, and you're gonna tell me you still sold the land for less than you even bought it for? Like that, to me, it just doesn't make sense.
what I was
If
gonna
that's
say
what you were
is-
trying to do, you did a very bad job at it.
But that's what I think may
know?
have happened. I'm not saying it's the best theory. I actually fall a bit more to unknown entity as my like main guess. But if, as I said, my second option would be hoax, and I just think that this was a family in the middle of nowhere who thought that they could run with something and they failed, and it didn't benefit them at all the way they thought they may have been able to pull off. I think it was a failed hoax.
I mean, it definitely could. It's just there's so much that goes into it, and I don't believe if it was a hoax, you're gonna take it to your grave. Like Vori
It's fair.
has done.
That's
It's
fair.
just like that's.
Like I said, it's not my first pick.
Like if it really has ruined your life like that, I want to do more research, see if she ever married or anything like that. But if she didn't, that's like a telling sign.
Yeah.
That is like, well, she didn't get married, she didn't have kids, she didn't have that, she didn't have any of the stuff that she really wanted. I mean, there are accounts by some of these investigators and everything. She is a vibrant, beautiful woman. who was very smart, who had not only like actual book smarts, but she had forestry smarts. She was very good with like animals, very good with nature, all this kind of stuff. She was just a very bright individual.
Yeah.
So it's like you would think if that's the description you're getting of her, that she would have found a husband fairly early, you would think. I mean, 13 to 14 in the 30s, you would assume that she maybe at least found a love interest around like 16 to 18, if not married by like 18 or 19. So it's very interesting to think about. It's very interesting to kind of put the pieces together. Like you said, I mean, it could have ended up any way. I mean, it definitely could have turned out that it was a failed hoax. Could have turned out as something more than that happening.
I don't think I'm like trying to put all my cards on the fake hoax.
No,
thing.
but I mean, it's
think,
valid though. I mean,
Yeah.
it's valid. I mean, when you look at it, any physical manifestations were really only experienced by the Irvings, were really experienced by anyone else, but like a lot of like knocking, tapping sounds.
There's plot holes.
Melodic
Is that the term?
stuff. Like,
Plot holes.
yeah.
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 There's plot holes on both sides of the argument of
Yeah.
the hoax theory.
Yeah.
There's things that don't add up for the Irving family message that they decided to give the public, and there's things that don't really make sense for why people would have other than the Irving family would have also experienced it then, if it was a hoax.
Yeah. So it's there's just two parts of the story that I don't think we're ever gonna manage to get. I mean,
too bad.
we
I
have a
would've
lot
loved
of
to talk
people
to
who
Viviana or whatever.
Vori? Yeah. But no, it's a great case, man. Gef the Talking Mongoose.
Gef the Talking Mongoose. I mean, I can't say I'm not done with this topic.
No, you are. You're not gonna look up anything after this.
No, I definitely think I'll probably be looking into it a bit more. I can't say I'm going to do heavy research, but it was more interesting of a story than I was expecting. And I hope chat sees that too. I was expecting something honestly ridiculous. Like I mean,
it sounds ridiculous.
It sounds ridiculous, but if you hear
like,
all of the actual aspects of how this would play out in real life and how it did play out in real life, people taking it to their graves, people doing actual research, and people investigating the actual space where this situation happened. This was a real thing. This was what people actually looked into. People like John Keel. I mean, that's a big name for the paranormal. I think it actually was way more intriguing of a story than I gave it credit, and so.
That's right.
To Gef, I apologize.
To Gef, we raise a glass to you, my man.
To Valerie,
wherever you are, Voorhees.
I hope I hope Gef is not bugging you.
And I hope you're resting in peace.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that does it for this week's episode. I hope you guys got something out of it. We'll be back again next week. As always, we've been your hosts, Joey Rucker
and Brent Murphy.
Later, Gators.
The Woodsman Podcast is actively reading and responding to everything and anything on Instagram and our email. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about the show, or would like to possibly be on the show, you can email us at thewoodsmanpod@gmail.com. Make sure to keep up with all things Woodsman related on Instagram as well, at WoodsmanPod. Don't forget to rate, like, and subscribe to the Woodsman Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, with video exclusively on YouTube and Patreon. Make sure to follow our personal accounts at Strange Kids and Piemaster J on all platforms.
The Woodsman Podcast is co-produced by Brent Murphy and Joey Rucker.
Our technical producer and engineer is Eric Bessero at Elite Sound Studios, with additional engineering by Brent Murphy.
Video editing by Joey Rucker, and Blood, Sweat, and Tears by all of us.
Any additional content by the Woodsman Podcast may not be used without our permission. Copyright Cabin 13 Productions.
And remember, always check for talking mongooses.